Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the president of Alpha Graphics, Ryan Farris. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much. If anybody is watching this or listening and has a franchise background, they're thinking, okay, why is Ryan on Emerging Franchise Brands? Alpha Graphics is definitely not an emerging brand. So I have the pleasure of bringing you on as a franchise industry expert, and we're going to talk about Alpha Graphics and actually services that you provide to emerging brands as well. But first, Ryan, let me ask you, everybody knows Alpha Graphics, but would you share maybe a little bit about how the company started and where it is today?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Alpha Graphics is well over 50 years now. So started franchising in 1970. We've got over 250 plus locations throughout the U.S., locations in Saudi Arabia, Brazil. So fantastic group, but we're far from done, right? So as you can imagine, we could have easily 700 locations in the U.S. So it's a great brand and continuing to grow really well. In fact, the last several years, pandemic and coming out of the pandemic have been some of the best years ever for Alpha Graphics. Our growth is super strong. Our owners' profitability, which I think is one of the most important aspects, has grown into the mid double digits, which is just phenomenal. And our continued ability to attract new businesses and new owners into the business has just been great. So we love the Alpha Graphics group. They provide great print marketing collateral. And I think that kind of brings us to some of the opportunities where we think Alpha Graphics can help other franchise brands with their print marketing needs. Nobody knows franchising better than a franchise themselves. So it's a great
That's
opportunity.
True. So let's talk about how you guys do help emerging brands, since that is mostly our audience or people looking to buy a franchise. But for those emerging franchise founders that feel lost and are looking for marketing, collateral material, and needing that kind of support, again, nobody would know it better than you guys. So maybe you could share a little bit about what you guys do for emerging brands.
Yeah, great question. So if you think about franchising, and honestly, I wish I would have done it myself before my own business a few decades back. But the value of a franchise is you got a proven system, a proven model, brand reputation to help that entrepreneur be that much more successful, or have those guardrails to put them on the path to success, which is really dominant on sales and marketing, right? Those are really big key attributes. So whether you're a franchisee looking for those proven systems that get you to that break even, get you to those customers better, faster, more efficiently, or you're the franchisor trying to scale that to your franchise partners, that is the value that we're trying to work with other franchise brands to solve, right? So having 50 plus years literally focused on helping other companies with their sales and marketing, we know we can help other, let's say, entrepreneurs, franchise owners with that exact same blueprint. How do you get your brand into your local market in the best possible way that gives you the best possible ROI? And then as you're a franchisor, how do you maintain your brand control? How do you leverage your marketing funds so that you maximize every dollar? And then ultimately make sure your franchise partners are as successful as possible. So what we've done within the Alpha Graphics brand is basically create that platform where a 250, let's say, independently owned and operated Alpha Graphics can now operate almost like one family to another family brand, right? So if you have ABC brand with 20 locations or 10 locations, we have probably an Alpha Graphics within 200 miles. Almost of every major area, we're 200 miles away or less. So we can be on site, we can provide consultation, or you can go online to our franchise marketing platform and order whatever those marketing assets are under your brand within your brand controls. So if you can imagine, this is helping a franchisor scale, good marketing collateral right into the hands of their franchise partners. Could be from the marketing fund, which is great, or could be just better purchasing power so that that owner can get good deals, which is another value, right?
Sure.
So that they can be better in their market. So we've really just kind of platformed that. We call it AG Enterprise, and we use that to help other franchise partners grow.
Yeah, well, Ryan, that's great. I think that as an emerging founder, or former emerging founder, it is never too soon for that franchisor to make sure that they do have brand control over what is being sent out across the network. And one of the mistakes we make when we're starting out, again, we often don't know what we don't know as a franchisor when we've never done this before. And so we think, well, I'm kind of new. I'll just kind of tell people, give them guidelines, and I'll approve each thing individually. It's time consuming. It's not efficient. And quite honestly, you are just going to lose control of the reins, because at what point are you going to start saying that I need to have some sort of guardrails? I think you rephrased that earlier, that you need to have some sort of guardrails for your marketing material. It's never, ever too soon to do that. Not to mention, you attract franchise owners because of the features that you have, and because you can show them that you have marketing collateral materials, by the way, that are already done, as opposed to saying, oh, well, you go ahead and find a local printer near you and we'll go ahead and pre-approve it. That doesn't sound like a franchise that I'd want to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really exactly what happens, right? You put a lot of effort into creating a brand. You probably run some company stores, prove the value. You focus on training. Then you focus on getting in the right owners. Then all of a sudden there's this brand, like, oh, I need to create a brand standard. Okay, I got the brand standard. And then you leave it to your brand new franchise partner to execute.
Right.
Well, what if they're printing this thing off a PowerPoint, right, and handing that to customers, or they're going to the wrong provider and your red turns to orange, right? All of a sudden, the one thing you need most, which is your brand consistently represented in the market, begins to erode. But it's not only that. I mean, your franchise partners don't want to hurt the brand. They just don't know any better. So not giving them some guidelines, or, hey, did you know, here's how to do it on social media. Here's how to put it in paid clicks. Here's how to put it on your car. Here's how to put it on your window, your door. So all of a sudden, your ability to scale becomes really challenging, right? And your marketing budget, as we all know, when you're first starting, isn't really that big, right? So whether you're running a 2% or a 10% marketing fund, 2 and 10% of zero is still zero. So giving these partners, more assets that they can use, and then the purchasing power to say, hey, this is cost effective and we're using our leverage to give you better value, I think is instrumental, right? And getting them to that break even is even more important, right? So doing it the right way is I think, a key to success.
Yeah. All right, Ryan. Well, I want the audience to get to know you a little bit better, and not just as this guy who's the president of 6 brands internationally, 3,200 units, and 52 countries? Did I write that correctly?
Yes, 52 countries.
Okay.
It's pretty amazing.
All right. I want to get back to Ryan as a child. I understand you started your entrepreneurial journey at 13 years old. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I was, I moved in my, let's say that 5th, 6th grade year into the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And lo and behold, my next door neighbor had a shiny red convertible Porsche. Okay, so now we're talking the late 80s, Tom Cruise era, for those of us that remember those days. The convertible Porsche was the dream for most of us. And he had one in his parking lot. And I asked my dad, I said, hey, who is our neighbor, and what does he do for a living? And he said, the only way you're going to find out is go talk to him. So he made me go talk to him, which is good, skills. And he proceeded to tell me that he's an entrepreneur, okay? And I didn't know that word, never mind how to spell it at that age. So again, I had to use the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is a whole nother chapter in my life, to learn what entrepreneur was. So then I figured out, okay, he's his own business. And that set the course for me immediately. I want to be that, right? I want that ability to call the shots, run a business. And then lo and behold, it turned out he was a franchise with the Domino's, right? So he
Well,
owned
well,
a
well.
majority of Domino's in the market. So then got introduced to the franchising model accidentally. Still talk to him to this day. He's still in that business to this day. So that was probably the start of my ambition to be an entrepreneur. And by my high school years, I started building websites back in the days where it was still Netscape Navigator, and you're competing with the Yellow
Yep.
Pages. In college, continued that, then started a property management business, and then just kind of continued to evolve into my career where, had my own business for close to a decade doing technology services and software, and then I sold that business in 2015. And
Hmm.
a friend of mine was at Alpha Graphics and said, "Hey, can you come help us out with our technology?" And I thought it was interesting. I thought, okay, this is an interesting business model. I'll go, work with it for a little bit, and fell in love. I mean, it's probably the best blend of entrepreneurial work and corporate work you can ever find. And now I've been doing it since 2015, 9 years later, and every day is still refreshing, exciting. There's nothing like working with people that have their own skin in the game, and you're not
Hmm.
going to make them do anything. So it's all about making sure it works for them, it's valuable for them, and they're going to give you really raw, good feedback all
Right.
along
Oh,
the
they
way.
will.
Which for those that might be listening, thinking about the franchise model, that is the best part of it, right? Is that
Yes, sir.
you only win if you both win, right? It's not about a franchisor or a franchisee. It is about an ecosystem that is all about winning, about providing success, creating good wealth, and also that good family work lifestyle that everybody's aspiring toward, right? It's a different way of providing for yourself, your family, your ambitions. And I love it. I really, really love it.
Well, and you really are so relatable to your franchise owners because you had this now entrepreneurial background where you had your own company for so long. I'm so curious to know though, how did you go from being this entrepreneur working for yourself and then all of a sudden work for a major corporation? You did the opposite of what most people do. How did you pull that off? And you have a smile on your
Honestly,
face.
it was my wife would be laughing is the reason I'm thinking about this because we were in Houston and my wife is not a big fan of hot and humid. She's from Vermont, okay? And so this particular opportunity was in Salt Lake City near the mountains. And so it was supposed to be like a year break, okay? It was supposed to be
Okay.
I take a year off from the 100-hour a week grind of running my own company and all the work that goes into building it and selling it and all those things, and I'll just let somebody else be the boss,
Mm-hmm.
do the job. And so it was my wife, right? So it was supposed to be this just 1 year break, and then I'd go back to doing something. And 9 years later, I'm still doing it because honestly, it is. I still feel like an entrepreneur almost every day I wake up. I do. I participate in our discovery days with our candidates every couple weeks, and I get to
Mm-hmm.
see their energy and build off of it. And so I think I'm satisfying, if you will, both itches, right? The itch of, being an entrepreneur, right? By guiding what we should be doing and how do you make a company that's been great for 50 years great for another 50? Okay,
Huge challenge.
or some of our emerging brands like World Options US, right, that has 4 owners. How do I turn that into 400? I
Mm-hmm.
love those challenges, but I also love being a little bit of a teacher now, right? Being able to share that wisdom back with these, newer entrepreneurs, which are a lot of times successful in their own right, right? To have the money to invest into a business, they've done some great things. How do I show them how to do it for themselves better, faster, more effectively? And I've enjoyed the teaching as much as seeing them, be successful. So that's how I've managed to your question live in this, I guess, corporate world.
You've pulled it off. What are the six brands internationally, if you would share?
Yeah, so we mentioned Alpha Graphics, so 50 plus years in the print marketing space. We also support PostNet, over 30 years now, and predominantly in the U.S. market with another 400 or so in Africa. And they're in the pack, ship, and printing space. So, When you're looking for, getting shipping services done or getting kind of that small run printing done, they're a great option.
Hmm.
Then we have the World Options US brand and UK brand. So they're in two countries predominantly. And as I noted, we got about 4 owners in the US that we're getting going and another 140 in the UK market that are already up and running. And they provide shipping logistics services. Okay, so it's no brick and mortar. You can work from anywhere, and you're providing freight logistics to a variety of companies. So if you manufacture air conditioning units and you need to get them from Florida to California, World Options will find the right way to get it there cost effectively. Or if you want to send it to, UK,
Hmm.
we'll do the same thing and get it on a, logistically air or boat, right, to get it across the pond, if you will. So that's that. That's three of the brands. One of those brands works in the UK, which is the World Options UK. We also have a brand called Pack and Send
Hmm.
that operates out of Australia, New Zealand, and UK as well, and they provide brick and mortar packing and shipping services. Now, in some ways, you think, well, how is that different than maybe like a UPS store or something? It,
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
it actually kind of is because they ship things like valuable art or your entire home's, let's say, pack up your home and you want to ship it from one country to another country. You have valuable goods, so very unique packaging, very safe way of packaging it. For those of you that hunt, right? How do you get that trophy in a
Hmm.
box to the next destination without breaking off the antler, for example? So that's kind of their specialty. So it's a really neat business
Huh.
model that fits into that shipping logistics space. We also have Mailbox, etc. For those of you that have been in the U.S., pre 2008, that was or is now the UPS store, right, in the U.S. market. But outside the U.S., it's still Mailbox, etc. 1,800 of those, 30 plus years, with a
Wow.
headquarters in various, countries: Italy, Spain, Poland, etc., Germany. So fantastic brand there. And then the sixth one is a brand called Multicopy that operates out of the Netherlands. And Multicopy is another print and marketing brand, actually 50 years plus in the Netherlands,
Hmm.
with over 40 locations in a pretty good size little region there, if you can imagine. So that's another great brand. So those are the six brands that I get the pleasure to work with. Wide range of entrepreneurs, wide range of business models, but they tend to fit in the B2B space. That's kind of our niche. So providing, packing, shipping, marketing, and logistical services to small and medium enterprises is really where we hone in. So there's a lot of commonality in our services between our brands.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind me asking this because I just remember mailboxes, etc., back in the day. But did the revolution of e-commerce and Amazon did it save those brands that are in the pack ship? My perception is that it completely changed the landscape of the profitability and ability for those concepts to more than survive but to thrive.
It was a very interesting shot, right? An injection, a boost, re-energizing of that business
Hmm.
for a couple of reasons, right? One, we had the pandemic where shipping all of a sudden became a way to move things around, and then two, e-commerce took off at the same time as a way to order those products and get them shipped, right? So it really, enhanced the non-retail, let's say, e-commerce arena. But even post pandemic, what we've seen is a continued, leveraging of a lot of these, what I would call SOHOs, work from homes, one man businesses where it's phenomenal, right? That market exploded and still continues to grow. And these shipping services are needed in a number of ways. A Postnet's a great example where, I don't want, if I'm working out of my home, I may not want everybody to know where my home is, right?
Right.
So I can use a Postnet for my mailbox or my virtual mail. So that is my business address, right? That gives me maybe prestige and protection. I can also manage my drop offs of my shipments for my e commerce customers. I can have preferred rates, loyalty programs. I can also take care of the labeling and the minor shipping and, I need instruction templates in there, whatever. I get all that service now through that brick and mortar outlet, and I'm still servicing a local community and a local business model, which again is the root of, I think, a lot of the franchising essence is being locally owned and operated and servicing your local customers in a face-to-face manner, if you will. So it really did. I think a lot of people thought it was going to kill the brick and mortar business, but I think depending on your model, it was the opposite. I think it really exploded. We went from maybe 5-10 deals a year to literally, I'm having a discovery today for PostNet today, and there's 24 people showed up today just in one day.
Holy cow! How many? There's 225 PostNet units.
Yep.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been compounding. We were about I'd say 180 or so just a few years ago. So now we're just steadily on the growth train. And
Amazing.
This year will be our best year in new owners coming into the brand since I've been operating with the company. So just a fantastic growth year for that brand.
Incredible. How much territory you got left for PostNet? You got it.
Tons.
Really?
That's what's amazing is that there's so many communities, and the U.S. market is continuing to grow. Out of the 220 locations, we could easily have a few thousand. So, and each of them has tremendous opportunity for success. So, it's just fantastic. You could almost put a dot next to every post office, and you have an idea that maybe I would pay a few extra bucks just to not stand in that line, and that becomes a baseline, right? So it's pretty neat.
100% agree. Absolutely. All right, Brian, let's talk emerging franchise brands. I want to get your expertise now on, get your take on a bunch of stuff. First off, what do you think are some of the key factors that really take somebody that's a bootstrapping founder that gets them out of that emerging phase and becomes, I don't want to leapfrog, I want to say leapfrogs too mature, but what do you think it really takes to get out of that emerging and get past that stalled growth that so many emerging brands get and get into a more established, mature one?
Yeah, I mean, I call it the flywheel effect. Okay, so where do you begin to actually spin off, more units that are successful? By the way, this isn't just a warm body and a check. Okay, but units that actually produce, that are profitable, with similar or not proportional resources. Okay, in the early days, it's a lot of manpower, figuring it out the hard way, grunting through it, but it's good, right? That's
Right.
how you learn. Is what worked for my corporate store going to work for the next guy, right?
Right.
But at some point at that 10, 15, 20 unit, you should be building a formula the whole way, right? So a really big key is, what is the system that is working? What is the KPI I measure to know that it's working? And then what is the training that fundamentally works into that? So if we work backwards on our flywheel, right? What does a successful store look like? What was the sales and marketing they did to do it? What is the operational skills they have to do to deliver the quality work? Then what is the training that fed that? Then what is the owner DNA that I want, right? And so then I can run the other way, right? So then I can work with my franchise development system to know my persona, my target owner market, my initial investment capital, and I can have that formula baked. And I can have a business plan that says, here is your pro forma business plan. It's fundable, it's bankable, boom, done. Then I have my training. Like, here's what I got to train them. What do I do to keep them on the guardrails, focused on what matters most, what sells best, where is my margin, and then what's the recipe, right? From inventory to build out to square footage to staffing, right? I've got my KPI. This is my metric, and I don't let them get off, right? A lot of early failures are if you let the owner do too much of the guessing, then they're going to burn their cash too fast, right? Cash is your most valuable asset when you're opening up a new store. So how do you put the guardrails in and make sure that they're trained well, use the cash right, and get to that success mark as fast as possible? Now we're down to operating, right? Now we're down to, am I delivering quality product? Great, check. And now, am I getting my customers to come back on a regular basis? And then that now is my flywheel, right? If that works, then now instead of training one-on-one, I can train 1 to 10.
Yes.
Right? My trainer can now train 10 people at the same time. I can have a performance group that measures all 10 at the same time, right? I can do my staggered, store openings
Mm-hmm.
in a method that makes sense with my training course, right? Now my systems start to kick in, right? So now my people become scalable, my workload becomes manageable. I know what I'm measuring. I know where to focus my time because I know what's working and what's not. So systems and scale, and I think if you is a starting franchisor, let's say emerging,
Mm-hmm.
having that end in mind is really important. How are you documenting what's working and what's not? How are you coaching your team to look for those things and to be honest enough to say that really sucked? What I mean,
Right,
that didn't
right.
work, and process it, right? Process out the failures, process in the successes, right? And then create your flywheel. I think putting that as a 36-month target, I think, is a really important thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your 3-year goal to get through some of the hard learnings,
Right.
prove out the scalable learnings, and then systematize it by year 3, where likely you've got the ability to begin to invest in some of those, let's say, infrastructure tools, right? Where you can have a CRM and MIS, accounting systems, right? So all of those things, if you do those too early, okay, you might be importing bad, or using bad metrics and bad tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's also a good crawl, walk, run, mindset to put into play.
Yeah. Well, for me, my goal certainly in the first 3 years wasn't to almost go out of business. We just burned so much cash. And I bootstrapped the company, and it was because I had sold my company owned location to fund it. So it was a really, really stressful way of franchising. Like, don't ever do what I did, just do what I say now. But I think that a lot of us make a very similar mistake when we franchise, in that we are so hell bent focused on training the franchisee operationally versus helping them train them on how to run a business. My wrong assumption was that most of these people either A, had run a business, or when I learned that this was their first go around, I assumed they had some business skills that I quickly found that they didn't have. Financial literacy was one.
Yes.
Second was the emphasis on focusing on the right things, the marketing and sales, not sitting behind your desk where it's safe and not getting rejected when you're trying to, work deals and trying to find venues to have your business. And I think that's probably a common mistake, right? That franchisors make is you're
Beyond,
training on
I'd
the
say
wrong
it's even
thing.
even mature brands make this mistake. Okay, our wheelhouse is operations, right? And that's what we know. We know what equipment, or how to make that sandwich, or how to do ABC. And our training's built for it. On our inventory, our supply chain, all hones in on it. But what we pulled back into and developed over the last couple of years is what we call the wheel of excellence. Okay, there's
Okay.
actually 4 quadrants that you have to help an owner be successful. And it's just what you spoke about. You know, if you start backwards, are they financially trained? Do they know what a P&L is? Worse, do they know what cash flow is? Because who cares what a P&L is? If you're
True.
not collecting the money that you're supposed to collect, how are you going to pay your team?
Right, right.
And if you got to pay for your inventory up front, but you don't get paid 45 days later,
Oh,
you gotta
yeah.
know finance. So that's the first quadrant. We really make sure that they understand, and it's not just starting from the business plan, it's getting into the day to day. Make sure you don't get into too much debt at the wrong rate. So what is your debt coverage ratio,
Mm-hmm.
and even employee labor, right? Make sure that your revenue per employee has the right ratio, which means, are you getting them are they productive for the money you're paying them? So those are the basics: cash flow management, debt coverage ratios, and then even if you're in a brick and mortar model, that lease and that lease term and those lease conditions can really haunt you day 1 to year 5. So making sure we really cover those bases. The next quadrant on the wheel, going the backwards way is what I call it, counterclockwise, is operations. That's the one we know well. What are the
Right.
things we need to do to operate, the equipment, the machinery, the business, the ABC. That one seems to be pretty sound, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move into the next really delicate one, which is sales, right? One of the key values is you as an owner are the chief salesperson. Whether you mean to be, want to be, you are, okay? And the
Agree.
more you embrace it and leverage it, networking, being in business environments, sponsoring school and community events, you will find phenomenal growth in your business by representing yourself as part of the brand because that's the flavor you've signed up for. So how do you do that? Do it well. And if the business is a high sales engine business, what is the sales training, sales management? Some
Hmm.
people are good at selling, but they're not good at managing salespeople.
Yes.
So make sure, you know, don't just assume because they had a good corporate career that they actually know how to manage people, right? Don't make that assumption. Very
Right.
dangerous.
And don't promote a phenomenal salesperson to sales manager because they're great at selling.
Two different things.
We've all done that. Like, this
Yes.
guy's amazing. You know, it'd be even better if we hire more of him and he manages them. And then he's miserable and we're miserable. And then
Yeah.
the relationship unnecessarily ends.
Yeah, we had this what I called a kind of the death loop where we would find an owner that's not a salesperson, and
Uh-huh.
then he would hire a salesperson, and then 6 months later fire him, and then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And we're like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Bad management, right? Oh, he didn't sell enough. Okay, well, what was his KPI? What do you mean KPI? Like, well, how many calls was he supposed to make? How many
Right.
leads did he have? All of a sudden we unraveled that we need to teach them how to be better managers. And whether it's
Yes.
sales or any area of the business, making sure you have good managers is key. But sales is the third quadrant. And then
Hmm.
the fourth one is marketing. Um, More and more, our entrepreneurs have to take some portion of responsibility for marketing. Okay, even the best marketing fund is not going to be hyper local until the owner invests something into it. So take pictures of your great work, get great customer testimonials, blog a few things, post a few pictures, be active on social media. The more you blend in with the headquarters marketing, the more effective it'll be. So we've now got I would say, our training in those four quadrants, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But it's not just training now. Now it's our ongoing, what you call coaching and field support. So those we measure those now, right? Are you healthy, and where are you not? Okay, so if you're unhealthy and financial, we fix that before we even. Why spend more money in marketing if you don't know
Right.
if you're balancing the books? Okay, and then we go to operations. If you're not good in operations, again, why are we selling more to make more people unhappy? So fix it, then
Hmm.
invest in sales, then invest in marketing. And so that's really helped our team, go to, what we call the wheel of excellence, right? So we want every center to be excellent. All four of those quadrants has got to light up green, okay? And what are the 2, 3 KPIs you want in each quadrant for it to be green, right? Depending on the business, it changes a little bit, but in marketing, we want organic and paid to be hitting the mark, right? In
Right.
sales, we want, to see that you're converting. If you're answering the phone, we want to see that those calls are being converted, right? And then in operations, we want net promoter scores. If customers aren't saying good things about you, then you might not be
Heck yeah.
delivering good things. And then financially, are you paying yourself what you wanted to pay yourself, and are you paying your people what they should be paid? Right?
Right.
It's really, really simple, but measuring that makes the hugest difference. And then you coach.
Yeah, and doing something with that information. I had this mentor who lovingly said that KPIs are nothing more than the autopsy. The patient's already dead. So if you got these KPIs, but you're not haven't done anything with it ahead of time, and what are
Yeah.
you measuring? It's useless. You have to have a dashboard that you're actively working from.
Absolutely. Lead and lag measures. I love using the weight analogy because everybody, every one of us relates to this. I don't care how good looking you are, everybody deals with the scale at some point in their life, right? But the
Right.
scale is the lag measure. That's the output. That's after whatever you did, has been done. The
Hmm.
inputs are what change the output, right? Did you work out? Did you eat the lean meats? Did you skip that extra, beer? you know,
Right.
whatever it is, measure the inputs, and the outputs will happen we know this, right? So weight management is my best analogy for my owners to say, please focus on the inputs. Are you doing what you're supposed to do every day? Did you make your 10 phone calls? Did you follow up with your customers? Did you ask for a referral? Did you greet properly on the phone? Did you do the fundamentals? And
Right.
if you do the fundamentals, the output will take care of itself. I promise you, if you follow our program and just check it off every day, consistent, 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 you'll find the scale will start losing weight.
Right. Right. You're doing the right things.
Yeah, and to your point, it's hard as an emerging franchise, I think, to figure out how to measure those. But putting that into play, even if it's a spreadsheet to begin with, even if it's a phone call to ask the right question, does help an owner focus on the things that matter, right? It's building a habit takes time, right? And so the more you can check in on them, remind them that they need to do that thing, reward them or attaboy them when they do it, the sooner it will become a habit, and then they are starting the flywheel, right? Then they're
Yeah.
starting to generate a business that's going to give you the results you want to see.
That's a good point. I do want to be gentle and forgiving to emerging franchisors that don't necessarily know what some of those KPIs might be, because it, quite honestly, from the time you franchise your company and you have those beautiful operations manuals, lined up on your bookshelf behind you, and you have all your sales brochures, you are a completely different company from the time you left that consultant to the time you have now awarded 5, 10 franchises. And the things you thought were important to measure and the activities that really were important could be completely different. So wouldn't you agree, like pivoting and being so in tune with what activities are really most important, like you said, in part of that flywheel, to making sure that they're making money and getting the right numbers? We've got to make sure we're measuring the right things and just not measuring stuff for sake of measuring.
Absolutely. Make sure they're measurable, right? I could say a lot of great things that you can't measure. So, one,
Right.
can I actually measure it? Okay. And then is what I'm measuring meaningful? And then the last one is keep it simple. Not every owner wants to juggle another 10,000 data points, right? So, 2 or 3 KPIs per quadrant, super simple. I mean, in today's workplace with the technology and data and AI we have available, a lot of times it's easier than you think, right? If
Yep.
you're running a website, you already have the data. How many eyeballs do you get? You should know what is the minimum eyeballs, and then what are the clicks I need from those eyeballs, whether it's buying something or setting up an appointment or just whatever your call to action is. You should know those too, and what is the minimum viable to run a business, right? And if it's not there, then how do we fix it, right? Do I need to change, tweak this, right? So one is that I call it the patient, right, diagnostic, right? I'm just going to tell you if you're healthy, then we're going to write a prescription, right? So the first thing is are you reasonably healthy with these 2 KPIs per quadrant? Great, let's move on to something else. Hey, no, this looks a little yellow, this looks a little red. Then you work on the prescription, right? So the prescription needs to be the I would say the coaching that is very, very delicate, right? So that's where you do a little bit more, let's say, blood work and really
Right.
get down to the root of the problem. Same with sales, right? I mean, it should be a pretty simple number of we need to close this many new customers a month. That's the output. What's the input? Okay. How many phone calls do you need to make, or how many appointments you need to set, or how many people need to walk in the door, or how many drives do you need to make? Simple KPIs, right? And it needs to be put somewhere, even if they're required to fill it into a spreadsheet once a week, once a
Doesn't matter
day.
how.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
keep. But if it's what I've found is if I can input it in 10 minutes or less, I can check the status on it in 10 minutes or less, then I will probably do it. If this becomes an exercise where I got to spend an hour finding data and crunching them and doing them, it's probably you didn't keep it simple enough. So
That's a
that's a
great
really good way
lesson.
to think about it.
Great lesson. So for founders, keep it simple, 2 to 3 KPIs. That's it. Don't overthink it. If
Exactly.
anything, it's more than what you were doing before.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, keep it
Then you'll
simple.
learn as your business evolves, as your owners get more robust, then the others will naturally emerge, right? They'll begin telling you, hey, this is what helped me grow my business, right? but you're going for the foundational, you're going for the basics, you're going for the keep it simple, right? So that's also manageable for for an emerging franchisor, right? Because you can't
Yeah,
manage all these data points. Otherwise, you got a guy dedicated to collecting data and reporting it, and maybe that's not the best budget day one.
true. Okay, Ryan, I need you to be the voice of reason for the audience. I'm talking about emerging franchisors that get enamored with the idea of growing internationally and they're not ready yet. Now, you've got wildly successful brands international. You've been running this company, you got 3,200 units. I need you to share with the audience when is the right time, or more importantly, when is the wrong time and the wrong reasons to grow internationally?
That's a really great question. International, I would say there's two approaches first to international. Okay.
Okay.
Are you going to directly own and operate that international country, meaning another headquarter office, staffed people that speak the native language? Those staffed people are going to find new franchise owners, right? R&D work, franchise development work, train them and support them. Okay. So I call that a directly operated country. Okay. That is a big investment, and you might be talking 3 to 7 years to see, your full return on that investment. Could be great, but we've expanded in that similar model, and it is you need to plan to lose some money for at a pretty extended period of time in order to develop that country and break even. Okay, not very many people take that approach, at least when they're based in the U.S. Okay. The second approach is some type of a master license, okay, where you find another you, okay, in that country that is willing to put a lot of skin in the game, and they're going to build that team, right? So whether you call it a master franchise, a master license, an area developer, there's a lot of different names for it, but at the end of the day, what you're saying is I'm going to sell all that territory to somebody or a investment team, and they're going to build the team. They're going to sell the franchises, they're going to train the franchises, and they're going to support them. So if you can imagine, in either model, you have to have a headquarters that has the bandwidth to train the trainer. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
you need to be so polished in your franchise development, in your operations playbook, in your sales playbook, in your marketing playbook, that you could pick it up and drop it into another country and teach those individuals how to be you, right? And then you can measure and coach up their performance so that they actually are successful, okay? It's a wildly successful way to grow, but it's an investment, okay? If you treat it as a sales event, oh, I'm going to cash in my $200,000 for selling Australia, it may not develop, which means you lost, okay? You just kind of hurt the brand by, getting a quick check, but it didn't expand, right? So, so my key to anybody that's starting in, let's say, the U.S. market, get the U.S. market polished and developed. Get your flywheel working, and make sure your team has the expertise to train another team. Okay, because that's essentially what you're doing is telling them how to staff up their 4 to 5 man team like you or like you started,
Right.
and build that path to success, because that's what they're paying you for. Instead of paying you for a franchise training, they're paying you for a franchisor training. And so if you're not ready for that, then don't do it. It's I know it sounds super simple, but that it really is that simple. You have to be the expert in how to run your country before you tell someone how to run another country.
Yeah, it's gonna magnify all of your problems when you're trying to train somebody and they're now exposed to the same issues.
Exactly. And this doesn't even tackle the cultural nuances,
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring
the
that up
supply
too.
chain nuances, the language, what works in one country typically has to be modified in another. Okay, a lot of the core ingredients will work, but culturally there's changes. How people want to do business, there's changes. What their investment ranges are, what their banking is, and you may not have all that ready. So there's quite a bit of infrastructure beyond just finding the person that wants to make an investment. Can you get them the same value proposition? Because a franchise only works long term if
Hmm.
owners make money, if they're profitable and they make money, right? So when you expand in another country, you're not just selling the brand to someone, you're selling the profitable model to someone. And so a lot of ingredients go into that profitability.
Okay, and I would imagine even a brand like yours, as big as it is internationally, there had to be some sort of surprise or a challenge maybe you weren't expecting in, say, for example, pack and ship? Like, why would it be any different somewhere else? But were there any learnings or anything you weren't expecting that was different?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll even take the World Options US as a good example. We had tremendous success in the UK, great growth, provided tremendous value. Seemed almost easier to come into the US market, much bigger market, even bigger what we call intra-country shipping, right? State-to-state shipping needs, and still great options for exports, right? So all the above checks a bazillion boxes, right? Challenge was there's a lot more competition, so getting the rates we needed to be competitive was a bigger challenge than we anticipated, right? So again, I can't sell, let's say, freight logistics unless I have a value proposition, unless I have good freight rates, right? Well, with no owners and no volume, how do I get good freight rates, right? So it's the chicken and egg problem, right? How do I
Right.
get the right deals? And so we had to do a lot more work than we anticipated to get good contracts, get the rates we needed, start penetrating and proving the market that we're right, and then scale the flywheel, right? Because that business model was driven a lot on making sure you have good, valuable services at a good price, right? And that was largely driven by volume, and the freight world is a lot of volume. So that was one trip up. Another similar one is we approach a country where we don't anticipate some of the laws, right? Labor laws, country laws, and that can create additional overhead you didn't anticipate. So let's say that the supply chain's not a challenge, you can find the value proposition, but you didn't anticipate it's 2x or it's 1.5x the labor, right? So all of a sudden, your margins aren't what you want them to be, right? And so then all of a sudden nobody wants to buy it, or they do it and they don't make the money they're looking for. So these become, really instrumental to success. Can you bring it into a country and get the same value proposition quickly?
Mm-hmm.
And does that value proposition translate in the owner's P&L and then your P&L, right? Sometimes it's owner okay, but maybe it's not covering your overhead, to be present in that country. So
Yeah.
these are big variables. I think international is a great opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got to be the right country at the right time with the right brand.
Yeah. And you go into a country because strategically you want to go there, not because somebody called you from that country and suddenly, we're going to Australia. Was that on the plan? No, but some guy called me and he has the money and he loves it. And he had my ear for 2 hours on the phone. That is right, Ryan. That is not the reason to do it. Please tell the audience that.
Yes, and I will tell you, with brands as old as ours, they have done that very thing.
Totally.
The
Yes.
founding owners of some of the brands got that phone call, and that's how we got a dot in that country, and it never went beyond one dot.
Right.
And that one dot is not super happy after a few years, right? So,
Of course.
so being more in the driver's seat. It's great to take the call, but really go through a discovery process, a decision-making process, a value prop. You know, someone with the money doesn't mean that you have all the flavor to help them be successful, right? It could open the door, but
Yeah.
you got to have the bandwidth and the commitment to make sure it actually gets there.
Sure. Okay. Well, we know everything in franchising comes down to relationships. And if you're running a 3,200 unit brand, there's going to be challenges, I know, along the way. But can you share with us how do you help maintain a positive relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee when you just have there's so many personalities and not everybody of course is on board, and we know that this is human nature, but what are some of the most important things that you do to foster a positive relationship when you're running brands of this magnitude?
Yeah, we have a phrase. We say the we, not the me. Okay, and that's a really important at every level of the business. Okay, when we look at our franchise partners as we and not me, right? Me and them, us and them, it changes everything. And if we can get them to do the same thing, it changes everything. Because a lot of times where I see contention in brands, it became an us versus them, right? I pay them X amount of money. And one of the things I don't love is the idea that the franchisee is the customer of the franchisor. They're not. And this is really important. They are not. A lot of you will start your business that way, that they're my customer. I need to answer their call. I need to take care of them. That could be great. but they're not your customer. Because I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, some of my locations did not perform well at all, right? They had to shut down, they had to close temporarily. I gave them more support when I was collecting zero money from them than I did when they were open, because I wanted them to be surviving that painful period of time. That's a partnership. That's not a customer. Otherwise, if I was a consultant, I would have paid them for that time, okay? So we're partners, not customers. And in fact, our customer is the end customer. Whoever is actually ringing up the register, that is our customer, okay? And it's really important that we approach everything that way, because when you look at it that way, then you're working together, right? I want to make sure you make money, but we only make money if we get customers, we make them happy, and we provide a valuable service to them, okay? Then I got to make sure you make money on that. And if both of those are working, then we're both going to be really happy. And so that people first, we over me, is what helps manage those potentially contentious relationships you can see in franchise networks. And while I'll tell you ours is not perfect, I think we do a really good job putting that message into our teams, putting that mindset out there so that we get to the root of the problem instead of the us and them, right? Because my royalties aren't changing, my marketing fee's not changing, my tech fee's not changing. And really, that's not going to solve the end problem that you're really frustrated about. You're frustrated because you're not winning in your market, or you're frustrated because you're not making the margin you wanted to make. So let's do that. Let's go let's go fix the customer problem. Let's go fix the margin problem and get you back on a good track, right? I find usually when you're making money, you're generally happier.
Yeah, that's like winning. Winning heals all.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just remind, our teams in every country that if we make sure they're winning, we'll probably have less headaches and frustrations. And if we celebrate the victories and get rid of the losses, then we'll have a better success rate with our networks. And so I think the other key is that you listen to them and you don't top down it. Okay. This can be done through really effective franchise advisory boards, franchise advisory committees, whatever you want to call it, but making sure they have a voice, right? That you're not dismissing their issues, their problems. It doesn't mean that they're right. They might be talking from their gut, which is okay, but listen to it. Let them be heard, then do the fact checking and make sure they agree with your fact checking, and then let them be part of the solution, okay? This I see it can heal a lot of the communication challenges with networks, where make sure they have a voice, make sure the voice is heard, regurgitated, and then action is taken. Okay, could be an action to say we're not tackling that as much as a few of you want us to. We don't think it's worth the time and the resources, and just be direct. Or we are going to tackle it, but maybe not on the timeline that we all wanted, but we're going to do it right? So I think really good communication, really good listening will diffuse more problems than you can imagine. And I think that applies to early brands as much as it does aging brands. Good communications, effective advisory committees are game changers. Game changers.
Ryan, great advice. Since you shared earlier there's still opportunity out there with your brands. What is the best way for someone to contact you or the company if they were interested in opening an Alpha Graphics or a Postnet or even a World Options in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking to become a franchise partner, you can visit any of our websites. You can visit alphagraphics.com, postnet.com, worldoptions.com. So literally it's that simple. It's not hard to find us and track us down. And every one of those sites, I'm pretty sure you'll find it prominent. Learn about becoming a franchise partner, okay? And you'll hear from our other owners and testimonials. It's fantastic. But if you're a franchisor and that you would like another franchise system to support your marketing efforts, again, check out our AG Enterprise, right? So look at Alpha Graphics and click on our corporate accounts or our AG Enterprise tool. And my team would love to talk to you. Even if we can't support you today or it doesn't make sense today, we'd love to still know about your business and provide any support we can, local or national. So fantastic opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think they should do that early and at least know what some of the opportunities and the options are for the future. Even if they think they're not ready, find out. Doesn't cost them anything.
Absolutely.
I got one last question for you. So I finish every podcast with the franchise tip jar. I'm doing something new for 2025. And that is, if you can give one piece of advice, Ryan, to if a close friend came to you and said they were thinking of becoming a franchisee with the brand, what would be maybe a piece of advice you'd give them to ensure they're making the right choice?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. You know, I would tell them to make sure they're looking at something that they can see themselves doing for a decade, right? And that's important because I think sometimes because of corporate careers, we look at things in 3 years or 5 years. But when you think of something in a decade, you really think about, will that brand be here in 10 years? Will I want to do this for 10 years? Is that where my passion, desire, ambition really sits? Is this what I want to do, or is this what I want to invest in? And I think, you know, for anybody that's thinking about, you know, having their own business, a clear distinction is, are you trying to be an investor? Because there might be other ways to invest your money, okay? Or do you actually want to do the hard work and get the benefits of being an owner entrepreneur? If that's the case, then franchising is absolutely one of the best ways to have a higher chance of success, okay? It cuts out a lot of the risk. Sometimes it's even more fundable because of some of the track records. And you get unbelievable data through the FDD process and disclosure process to understand what you're really getting into. And then my final bit of advice is read that information, right? It's there for a reason. Make sure you understand that business model, that market, that offering, those fees and services really will enable you to have a higher chance of success. And if you check those boxes, then move your chips in and go.
Ryan, that is fantastic advice. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad our paths finally crossed after all these years and got a chance to at least meet you over this podcast, and hope to see you hopefully at the IFA maybe in February.
Absolutely. I absolutely will connect up at IFA. It was great to be on the show, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.